One of the biggest mistakes people make in relationships is thinking that what keeps love alive is something big. Some huge moment, some dramatic speech, some perfect date, some surprise weekend, some giant apology, some massive romantic gesture that provides everything is still there. Those things can be beautiful, they can matter, they can create a memory. One of the biggest mistakes people make in relationships is thinking that what keeps love alive is something big. Some huge moment, some dramatic change, some perfect date, some surprise weekend, some giant apology, some massive romantic gesture that proves everything is still there. Those things can be beautiful, they can matter, they can create a memory. They are usually not what keeps a relationship alive. What keeps a relationship alive such is much smaller than that. Is a little check-in. Is a message that is in the middle of the day, is just remembering what mattered to someone last week. It's asking how that thing went. It's noticing a small shift in the energy. It is following up on something they said in the passing. It is the tiny moment where somebody feels like you are still here with me. You are still paying attention. You still see me. I think a lot of people underestimate how much emotional life is held together by those moments, because grand gestures are visible, they're dramatic, they're easy to point to, they photograph, they look like love from the outside. Small check-ins are different. They are quiet. They are easy to overlook. They are not flashy. They do not always get posted. They are often the real reason a relationship stays warm. Because warmth is not usually built through intensity alone. It's built through continuity, through repeated signals that say, I've not lost sight of you. I still care about your inner world. I still remember what is going on with you. I still want to reach out towards you before too much time passes. That is what makes somebody feel emotionally chosen. Not just one big moment every once in a while, the repeated experience of being remembered. That matters in a deeper way than most people realize, because a lot of relationships do not become distant because some giant mistake. They become distant because the small signals disappear. The check-ins get weaker. The follow through gets weaker. The remembering gets weaker. The curiosity gets weaker. Now both people are still technically in each other's lives. They are no longer feeling consistency reached. When that keeps happening, something starts changing inside the relationship. It starts feeling less alive, less current, less emotionally fed. That is why a lot of people can say things like, I still love them, but something feels off. We still together, I do not feel as close as anymore. Or nothing huge is wrong, but it doesn't feel the same. What they're often describing is not a lack of love, it is a lack of small ongoing moments that helps keep the relationship emotionally current. Because closeness is current. Closeness is not only history. Closeness is not only a label. Closeness is not only living in the same place or talking every day. Closeness comes from fresh contact, fresh noticing, fresh updates, fresh moments of emotional reach. That is why a person can throw out one giant gesture and still have the relationship feel cold a week later. Because the big moment did not fix the daily pattern. It did not change whether the relationship feels consistently held. That is the deeper issue. People do not want only to be loved in some abstract sense. They want to feel felt. They want to feel remembered. They want to feel like they are still actively present in the other person's attention. Small check-ins do that in a way grand gestures often cannot. Because small check-ins say, I'm not only here when things are dramatic, I'm here in the ordinary. I'm here in the quiet middle. I'm here before the distance grows too much. I'm here while life is still happening. That ordinary kind of presence matters so much, especially in the long-term relationships, because over time, life gets louder, work gets louder, stress gets louder, routines get tighter, responsibilities get heavier. If a relationship is only waiting for special moments to feel special, then it starts starving in everyday. The everyday is where most relationships actually live. That is what most people forget. Most relationships are not lived in anniversaries, they are lived on regular weekdays. They are lived in the tired moments, the passing moments, and the between moments. The moments where one person could easily forget to ask but chooses to ask anyway. The moments where one person could assume but chooses to stay curious instead. That is where emotional closeness is quietly built. I think this is why some people slowly stop feeling chosen in relationships that still look fine from the outside. Because grand gestures may still happen every now and then. Birthday dinners, vacations, flowers after an argument, a sweet spot online, a sweet post online, a big celebration. The daily experience of being emotionally remembered might still be weak. If that part is weak, the relationship starts feeling inconsistent from the inside. Because deep down, what a lot of people are asking is not just, do you love me? They're asking, do you notice me? Do you track what matters to me? Do you remember what I was carrying? Do you think to check in on me without having to make it dramatic first? Do I exist in your attention when life gets busy? That is the real hunger underneath a lot of the relationship pain. Once you see that clearly, the whole idea of love changes, because love is not only about intensity, it's about maintenance. Not maintenance in some dry, boring sense. Maintenance in the human sense. Protecting connection from drift. Protecting closeness from autopilot. Protecting the relationship from becoming something that only gets attention when it's in crisis. Because that is another thing people do. They wait until the relationship feels really bad to suddenly become attentive. Now they want the big talk, the big date, the big fix, the big emotional repair. The relationship was not starving from one giant performance. It was starving for a steady emotional nutrition. Small repeated moments, that is what keeps things alive. Honestly, this applies way beyond romance. This is not just a dating thing. This happens in friendships. It happens with family. It happens with mentors. It happens with people you genuinely care about and never meant to drift from. The little check-ins disappear. Life gets noisier. Good intentions stay in your head. The relationship slowly cools off. Not because anybody was fake. Not because the care was not real. Because the care was not made visible often enough. That huge part is why I care about building Everreach as a personal CRM. Because when I really look at relationship drift, the problem is not usually that people need help caring more. It is that they need help acting on care in a more consistent way. They need help remembering what matters. They need help following through on the small things. They need help checking in before too much time passes. They need help staying current with people who matter instead of relying on memory alone. That is what Everreach means to me. Not some cold business tool for human connection, some weird robotic system that replaces real relationships. The exact opposite. A personal CRM that helps real care become more reliable. Because relationships do not usually stay warm through grand intentions alone. They stay warm through visible, remembered, repeated care. That is exactly where small check-ins matter so much. A small check-in says I remembered. A small check-in says what you said mattered to me, stayed with me. A small check-in says I did not just hear you in the moment and forgot you after. A small check-in says I'm still emotionally here. That is powerful. That compounds because one small check-in does not only create one good moment, it changes how safe the relationship feels over time. It changes whether someone feels like they can bring you into their world. And it changes whether they can trust that your care is more stable and not random. It changes whether the relationship feels like something alive or something they have to wonder about. And I think that is why little things matter more than people realize. They create emotional predictability. Not boring predictability, just safe predictability. The kind where someone knows I matter enough to be remembered. I do not have to make a pain dramatic to get your attention. I do not have to beg for softness. I do not have to wait for a crisis to feel chosen. That kind of stability is built in small ways. That is why I think grand gestures can actually distract people sometimes, because they make people feel like love has to look big to count, when really some of the strongest signs of love are truly the small things, the small tiny things. Remembering the meeting that they were nervous about, checking on the thing that they mentioned in a throwaway sentence, asking their energy, how's their energy been lately, sending a message before the week disappears, bringing up something important without being reminded. Those moments do not always look impressive. They feel intimate. They feel accurate. They feel current. They feel like contact, and contact is what keeps relationships from going emotionally stale. Because the opposite of drift is not intensity, it is contact. Fresh contact, regular contact, meaningful contact. That is what keeps someone from feeling alone beside you. That is what keeps someone from wondering if you still see them. That is what keeps a friendship from turning into just a memory. That is what keeps a family bond from becoming occasional obligation. That is what keeps a mentor relationship from fading after one great conversation. It is a small continued signals. That is also why small check-ins matter more than grand gestures in the world of professional relationships too. People remember who follows up thoughtfully. People remember who remembers what mattered. People remember who checks in with warmth instead of only reaching out when they need something. That is relationship depth. That is trust. That is the kind of thing a lot of people want but do not have a system for. When there's no system, the small things become random. When the small things become random, relationships start to be depending too much on chance. Chance is terrible at protecting what matters. That is one of the deepest reasons EverReach makes sense to me as a personal CRM, because a personal CRM should not just be about storing names. It should be about protecting the relationship's continuity, protecting remembered details, protecting the little moments of follow through that keep people warm with each other. That is the real value. A better way to act on care before drift turns into distance. Once you really understand that, you stop asking what huge thing I should do to prove that I care. You start asking, what small thing can I do consistently so that people who matter to me feel it? The question changes everything, because now you're not performing care, you are practicing it. You are not trying to rescue the relationship with occasional intensity. You are feeding it with ongoing attention. You are not waiting for the perfect moment. You are respecting the quiet moments before the relationship goes cold. I think a lot of people need permission to value that more. Stop treating the small things like they're too small, because the small things are often the whole thing. The small check-ins are what tells someone this relationship is still alive in me. You are still on my mind. Your inner world still matters to me. I did not let life get so loud that I forgot to reach toward you. That is love in motion. That is friendship in motion. That is care in motion. That is why small check-ins matter more than grand gestures, because grand gestures might create a high point. Small check-ins create continuity. Grand gestures might create a memory. Small check-ins create trust. Grand gestures might look impressive once. Small check-ins make someone feel chosen over time. And over time is where relationships either deepen or fade. If I choose between one giant emotional performance and 100 small remembered moments of care, I would choose the small moments every time, because the small moments are what keep a relationship from quietly starving. They're what keep people emotionally current with each other. They're what make care feel real instead of theoretical. They are a huge part of why I believe EverReach as a personal CRM matters, because people who matter should not have to depend on your memory alone. They should have a place in a system of care that helps you actually follow through. Not in a robotic way, in a human way, in a way that makes sense, easier to stay warm with the right people, in a way that helps the small moments happen before distance hardens, because most relationships do not need one giant miracle. They need more small moments to say, I remembered you before the silence got too loud. Shortcut points. Grand gestures create Create memories, but small check-ins create trust. People do not only want to be loved, they want to feel remembered. The opposite of drift is not intensity, it's contact. A relationship usually starves in the everyday, not in the dramatic moments. Small check-ins make care visible. The people who matter should not have to rely on your memory alone. Everreach is a personal CRM for helping care become more reliable. So check it out today.